Many of you know how do you set up your infrastructure as a code with Terraform and Azure with the help of Azure DevOps. You may also aware about how do you set up the continuous integration and continuous deployment for your infrastructure as a code. It is a lot more easier to set up the CI/CD pipeline for a single environment wherein you create a plan and then the plan gets deployed to one environment. But what if we require to deploy the same plans to be cascaded from one environment to all the other environments available in your program? What if you want to set up the get it check-in for your higher environment? For example, I am okay to deploy the changes onto the dev environment without having any approval, but when it goes to the test environment or maybe UAT or higher environment, I want to make sure that the plan is getting reviewed by someone before it gets deployed to the target environment. And the last, how do you make sure that the Terraform plan which you are building, the same plan file is getting used across the different environment? How do you set up this kind of a pipeline strategy? So it looks like a bit of complex, but now the job is more easy. In this particular tutorial, we are going to learn how do you set up your CI/CD pipeline to deploy onto the various environment. Hi, I'm Rakesh Suryavanshi. I'm Azure DevOps expert, and I'm going to help you to set up the CI/CD in this session. Let's start the journey now. I have the infrastructure as a code set up with Terraform in Azure DevOps project. So this is just a simple Terraform project wherein I'm just trying to create a resource group. That's it, nothing complex, because our objective is just to set up the CI/CD pipeline, not to go into the deep dive on Terraform basics. So if you can check that, I've just defined a couple of locales and then main file, and then I have created a provider.tf file. This is what my arrangement is, and now I've created a CI/CD pipeline, a couple of CI/CD pipeline in fact, but this is what I'm going to discuss, how we are going to look at the implementation here. So to start with it, we need to understand the layout of the YAML representation, and you can find the layout of the YAML representation here in this link. Before I go and explain the YAML representation, let's see how do you create a CI/CD pipeline in Azure DevOps. Many of you know how to create it, but for those who are new, let's try and create it from scratch. So here on the pipeline option, you can click on the pipeline and then you can create a new pipeline. Select a Git repository, because this is a Git repository which I have, where I've hosted my code. So I'm going to choose this option. But if you have any other repository like GitHub, Bitbucket, then you can choose the appropriate option. As of now, I'm going to choose Git. Then obviously within the project, it will give you the list of all the repository available. So right now, if you can see, I'm onto this particular project, Dream. This is my organization, Learning 04. The name of the project is Dream Project 01, and then within that I have these number of repository, which is IAC. So I just got a one repository, so I'm going to choose that one. If you are going to create a new pipeline, then you can choose this one. If you have the pipeline already available, then you can use this pipeline existing available. Apart from this, if you want to create a pipeline for any other purpose, so there are some built-in templates available in Azure DevOps which you can use it. So it will give you predefined set of steps for your pipeline, which you can customize if you need to. So as of now, I'm going to select start pipeline. So if you can see, The pipeline has created a new name, Azure pipeline-1. This is the name of file which is going to be created inside my repository. Once I'm going to create click on save, this is the file which is going to be checked in inside my repository. Now, as I have shown you, within the pipeline, when you create a pipeline, this line of these green lines will show you some of the startup guideline for setting up your pipeline. So you can always go and check the documentation about the YAML representation. Here, when you create a pipeline, by default it creates a predefined basic setup which will try to give you some level of understanding. Here in this pipeline we are saying, okay, this what is my trigger level, which is the pool I am going to use, for example the machine which is going to use to run your pipeline. So if you are using any of the task which is specific to Windows, let's say, then you may want to make changes to your pool, which is a VM agent. So instead of Ubuntu latest, I may want to use the Windows latest or macOS latest. So next is the steps. So steps is not necessary to define it's not necessary to define the steps at the very root level. You can define the different things at the root level. We'll go through that in a minute. Let me comment this out for a moment. So I'm commenting out this one as well. So if I go to the representation of the pipeline, and the good thing which Microsoft Azure has done is it has provided a web-based layout in which you get the IntelliSense when you write your YAML pipeline. So like you get the IntelliSense and your Visual Studio or any of the IDE provided by Microsoft or any other provider, then you get the IntelliSense. So similar kind of implementation or the help it gets in the web browser itself, so which is a very cool feature. So now I'm going to look at first of all the YAML reference documentation just for your reference. How do I use that? So if you look at the pipeline structure, so pipeline has got stage, and then within the stage you can have multiple jobs. So within one pipeline you can have multiple stages, and one stage can have a multiple job. So you can think like pipeline is a collection of stages, and a stage is a collection of jobs, and jobs is a collection of multiple steps. If I scroll it down later further, here is the pipeline sample which is given, which you can define your pipeline with the different resources. For example, here it is described. You can define the pipeline trigger type. You can define if you want to target your pipeline to a specific pull request, then you can define the pull request type. If you have multiple stages, you can define the stages here as well, which we are going to define in our case. So first of all, the name of the pipeline. So if you want to use the name, a specific naming convention, you can choose the name of the pipeline. And then the resources, it could be either a resource or any existing pipeline or number of repository. Let's say if your pipeline is targeting to various repository or more than one repository, then you can specify the name of those repository as a collection. So all these variable types are different types of collections which you can define. Again, you can define the different variable types which we are going to use as well. And then once you have these stages defined, what you can do, if you note down, if you have a single stage, you can omit these stages. But if you have a multiple stage, then you need to define the stages, and within that stages you can have the multiple stages, and then you can have the jobs keyword inside that. So for example, I have a stage, then stages, which will be collection of stage, and then within one stage I can have a jobs, which is again a collection of job, and within the job I can have multiple steps, which is a collection of different steps. Yeah. So this is the overall representation which my YAML gives you. So now let's move back to our pipeline. Here, as we have seen over there, I'm by default it is targeting to master, but let's change a little bit. I just want to make sure it is targeting to a specific path. So like this, you have these stages. Now you can see you have the stages. Within the stage you have a single stage, then you have the job, and within the job you have jobs collection. Within the job collection you have the jobs, and then steps, and then within the steps we have the individual steps. So like I can copy this, let's say build stage, and I can copy this and create another stage called this as in deploy stage. You can see I have the pipeline created which has got two stages. One is build and another one is deploy. The build and deployment stage, and our build step is supposed to build the Terraform plan, and the deploy step is supposed to deploy the Terraform plan which is created in the build step. So let's see how do we do that. First of all, I'm going to change the name and then calling it as in Terraform plan, for example, just to make it more clear. I'll just call it copy, paste it, and then I'm going to call this as in Terraform let's call the apply on dev thing. When you create a deployment, you need to define the strategy. Here we are going to define the strategy. Once you have the strategy defined, you can say deploy, and once you have the deploy, you define the steps to deploy. So here I'm going to say this is my step, which is good. So this is how a deployment looks like. So let's copy this over, command copy, I'm going to paste it this just to make sure. So I have two stages, one more, and the final step. So here what we are saying, I'm on the dev steps, and then I have apply on, let's say, test. This is depends upon dev. So I'm going to call it as a tst. I'll tell you what this environment is. UAT, call it as a UAT. Test. And then the final one would be, let's say, my pre-environment, which is pre-prod. So now you can see I have got the multi-stage pipeline where we have plan, apply on dev, test, UAT, and pre-prod. Let's see how we are going to generate the plan file. To generate a plan file, what I'm going to do now, I'm going to use a couple of tasks and steps. So I'm going to just copy the reference task. So basically I'm using this task. I'll just show you Terraform tool installer. So what it will do is it will install the Terraform. So similarly I'm going to use this build.fig, this in a build command as well, because I need to run the build. So what we are doing is we are basically creating the installation of Terraform, and once the installation is ready, next thing we need to do is we need to move the Terraform, we need to run the Terraform init plan and plan command. So before I run the init and plan command, so I just want to make sure I'm on the current directory where I have all my Terraform code. So what I'm going to use is the system dot default system dot default working directory, and then the name of my directory, Azure DevOps here. And then next what I need to do is just print echo. Here I've run so now I've added Terraform init command with couple of parameters which is related to backend files, like I want to store the Terraform files onto the storage account, the state file onto the storage accounts. That's why I just pass on this storage account configuration, the name of the storage account, the container name for which I'm going to use to store my state files, and then the storage account access key, which I'm reading it from the variables. This is just for a demonstration purpose. I'm just using it. The variables I've defined it here at the top, but it is always recommended to either use the variables in the pipeline variable section, which you can define it from here in the library, or if you want to define it for individual pipeline, then what you can do is you can go to the trigger, define the variables here. If you've defined in the library, then you may want to define the variables directly from here. So I'll go back to the pipeline. I'll change the name of the pipeline, and I can see next I've run the Terraform plan file. So plan file is basically just generating the plan file that give it the name of the output, and here in this case I'm passing on the client ID, client secret, and tenant and the subscription, so that I can make sure I'm targeting the Terraform to a specific Azure subscription, and this depends upon the line of code which I have it on my Terraform repository. I can show you just quickly. So you can see within the provider I'm saying these are my list of variables which I've defined in the variable section, and now when I go to the provider section, I'm using these variables to define the my Azure RM provider, which you need to pass on here. So once that is going to be ready, the plan is going to be ready as well. Next, I'm just using the copy file task. So I'm copying everything, but I'm excluding the Terraform directory. Terraform directory will be the directory which will have the Terraform exe install on there, or the Terraform provider exe install on there. So I don't want to copy that, so that's why I'm excluding this explicitly. So make sure you are including this particular steps as well. This is really important. And I'm copying everything else and publishing it as an artifact directory. Once the artifact directory is ready, next thing is you have the deployment stage. Within the job you have mentioned, okay, this is a deployment job, and the name of the job is development or the dev. Here, very first step what I'm doing is downloading the current artifact which has been generated as part of this build. So this is going to download the artifact in this particular stage. Once the artifact is downloaded, very first thing what we are going to do, we are going to repeat the same step. First is install the Terraform onto this particular machine wherever this command is going to be run. So at the moment I'm using the Visual Studio hosted by agent, so I need to make sure the Terraform is installed. That's why I'm using the task. But if you are using any custom build agent where the Terraform is already installed, so you may want to skip this particular step. Next is the script section. Again we are repeating the same thing. I'm running the initialization command, I'm running the plan command, and then finally whatever plan is generated, I'm going to run the that particular output plan output file in the apply command. The same it goes to the rest of the environment. Let's see if it runs far. So you can see this has gone through right now. This might take a bit of time. I can show you a couple of Terraform plan already run. Once it runs, it will look like this. So at the moment I guess I've already run the Terraform plans file, so that's why it says there are no changes to the plan. Let me change the source code a little bit. On my main file, what I'm going to do now, let's change the instance type to 01 and then run the, because I've already run the Terraform for this particular instance, so I just want to modify the Terraform configuration and just want to see how it runs. As you can see, the last step which it was run, it has run through and it has not found any differences so far. That's why it says refreshing the Terraform file, and it has not found any changes at all. So now this time I'm making sure I have got a couple of changes deployed. So let's see what we got here now. So what we are saying here is, earlier I've created the Terraform resource group, Azure resource group with the Terraform. The resource group name was PE Learner, then the default, and then -99. But now, as you can see, I've changed the environment instance from 99 to 01. That's why it is going to change the name. So it's basically deleting the state file and going to recreate the state file. So let me see what do we have in the portal.azure.com. So now you can see this is my storage account where I'm storing all my config file. This is the name of the container which I'm using. At the moment you can see the Terraform state file, which I've changed it, and here is the representation of my state file, and this is what the changes it has got. So using the pipeline, I'm managing the state and storing it into this storage account, and all it has done through with the help of these commands which I have specified in my pipeline. Which is here. So in the init command I have specified this is the storage account it needs to use, and in the plan command I'm targeting to a specific storage account, a specific Azure environment. Now if you have seen carefully, the Terraform deployment is gone to, so this is basically the job for Terraform plan, and this is Terraform installation and the Terraform apply. So basically it is applying the changes. Now if you see the changes it has created, it is destructed and then recreated basically. Now why it is waiting for test environment? It has not deployed the changes to the test environment. Why is it so? The reason for that is because in the pipeline we have defined the different environments. If you see, if I go back to the pipeline, you have the different environments, which is this dev, test, and the other environment. So now in the environments I've defined the different approval gates. Now once you define any environments to a pipeline, the environment gets generated or created here in the environment section. Now you can see all my environment which are defined in my pipeline, it has been created here. So what you can do is you can go ahead and define the approvals, gated approvals here in this environment. For example, if I want, I can go to the environment UAT, and then here I can add a resource, or if you click on these three dots you will see the approval and checks. So here you have a number of tasks which you can specify. The very first one is the approval, but apart from that you have multiple options to go on. At the moment we are going to see how do you define the approvals. Once you click on the approvals, here you can define the name user or user group on which you want to have the approval, and then you can specify some built-in static message. Kindly review the plan file and the build stage. So this is what the message you will get. Now if you go to the pipeline, and once a particular step is going to come, the similar thing I have defined in my test environment as well. If you see, here is my approval, and then I'm marking kindly review the build stage for terraform plan. Go to this stage here. Here you can see the deployment is waiting for the approval here. Now I can click the get check-in, and either I can reject and approve the plan, and then it will go for the deployment, something like that. So this way you can define the multi-stages pipeline within the Terraform, and which can be utilized to deploy from one environment to other environment using the Azure DevOps. Thanks for watching this. I hope you like the video.